Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go. Here we go. This is USAPrepares.com. Kyle's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Doc Graham's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Welcome, Rick.
Morning. Good morning. I can't be that silly. Write that out of the Grillium this morning. Goodness.
You know, Rick, it's always great hearing your voice. Yeah, I was thinking about some serious topics, really serious topics over the last couple of weeks, and one of them is just unbelievable. And why don't we just start out with Fukushima? Jeez, the TEPCO wants to release radioactive waste. They don't know what to do with it. The robots aren't working. They can't clean it up. They're at their wits' ends. We're going on 6 years. And so 700,000 tons of radioactive waste. What do they do with it? Well, they just want to dump it in the Pacific Ocean.
They're already experiencing problems from previous dump. And we had a whale wash up again yesterday on the Pacific coast, dead from radiation. And I posted that. I think I posted that one on Facebook because, in my opinion, this now constitutes the single most important hazard that has happened in the 21st century. It's like we had a nuclear war. Bombs were dropped, plural, and now we have the fallout problem to deal with. And all of this is from just 4 nuclear power plants that were caught in a minor tsunami. And when I say minor, it was only 3 feet, it wasn't 100 feet, and it certainly wasn't a mile high, like the movie I was watching with Armageddon last night. Now, I'm going to say some other things. With the New Madrid fault line and what's happening at Indian Point and down in Florida, every single nuclear power plant that was made by General Electric, the Daiichi-like design, they're all more than 20 years old, they're all leaking, and nobody has yet come up with a solution on how to handle the waste material. What does that say is what's going to happen next if the grid were to go down? Oh, and by the way, the grid is going to go down. You can count on that because they're already talking about trying to build some kind of a shielding thing for a coronal mass ejection that could have happened this last week. This one we received, we're very lucky. We've been lucky 3 times now since we started talking about Fukushima and what we call near, taking the Earth back into the Stone Age as far as electric power. We're in a bad situation, and nobody is even attempting to try to address this issue except behind closed doors. The public's not involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not right.
I was on the phone with, and I'm not going to give this person's name, very, very high-ranking person at an electric company. And I was on the phone with this person for over an hour. I know this person. And we were talking about coronal mass ejections. And he was telling me that it's possible for a given location to disconnect itself from the grid. What I'm saying is a regional area or a section of the grid could literally disconnect itself from the grid should there be a catastrophe like a coronal mass ejection. And I think that's wonderful. I think that's wonderful because why do we all have to go down if we can save some of us, right? And it's possible.
Who gets to draw the short end of the stick?
Well, that's why some of our class needs to consider running for the board of directors of organizations like electrical cooperatives, so that we can be involved in the decisions that will protect our own lives. And by the way, that's why I'm running.
Don't you have to be affiliated for those kinds of positions with either the Republicans or Democrats? Aren't you supposed to have an affiliation? You can't just put independent, can you?
Well, it sure would help. I'll tell you what. I had a discussion with someone who is in the know about running for the board of directors. And my question, and this is, all right, now we're switching to me, and me running for the board of directors of an electrical cooperative. So we buy our power, electricity, from this organization. It's a cooperative where we're all members. And in order to run for the board of directors, you get nominated by a committee. The committee figures out who they'd like to see run against the incumbents. They decide who gets to run. And who picks the committee? The board. So the board picks the committee, and the committee picks the people who are going to run against the board members.
That's a conflict of interest by definition.
Then these people will run, and what happens is, if it's anything like it was the last time I ran, you get to go on stage, and you get 2 minutes. You get to speak before whoever shows up for the annual board of directors election. You get to speak for 2 minutes and say why you should be on the board. And that's it, 2 minutes. You get to campaign. You get to put out some signs farther than 50 feet away from the front door of the Cowan Civic Center in Lebanon, Missouri. Maybe 5,000 people will show up, maybe more. And you have 2 minutes to convince whomever you want to vote for you why they should vote for you. So when they walk in, you have an opportunity to talk to them. You have 2 minutes on stage, and that's pretty much it. You can have some signs and posters and banners and business cards. But most people vote for the same people they voted for before. Now, how does that work? Well, I asked for information about attendance records of the board of directors meeting, and what I found out was that one of the board members has been on the board for 45 years. 45 years. Another guy has been on for 18 years. The others pretty much have been on for 8 years. And that kind of tells me why things are the way they are. Because these people these are like lifelong positions. It's like John McCain. This is like our government. You know, you get selected to run, you run, and then it's a lifelong job. It was never supposed to be like that, ever. But that's the way it is. So that explains why we have some of the problems. I know we want to talk about science today, but what I'm trying to say, class, is there's so many things that are going wrong all around our lives. We talk about Fukushima, the threat to the ocean. Japan has declared war on us. Japan has declared war on us for the second time. And this time, much worse than the last time. The last time it was just a world war. Now they're threatening every single cubic inch of the planet with radioactivity. The air, the water, the ground, everywhere on our planet is being threatened with radiation poison. And it's a killer. And if you want proof, just look at the ocean. It's affecting
the West Coast now. When I buy seafood, I have to go in with a Geiger counter. I cannot trust Pacific salmon or halibut anymore. The deep fish.
Well, and you certainly can't trust the clerk or the stock person who say, hey, is this safe to eat? Is it okay? It's like, yo, man, what would that clerk say? Other than what would he say or she say if you asked, is this radioactive? They have no clue. No clue what we're even talking about.
They do in Japan, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a protocol now in that whole region that everything is measured before it goes into the store. And even then, it's suspicious and higher count than it should be. And the NETC, the Nuclear Emergency Tracking Center.com, NETC.com tells you what's going on in your point of the world at any minute. It's updated. And take a look at what you are personally enjoying in Missouri this morning. And nobody is talking about that.
How about the cancers?
10 times what it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, you now have 10 times background radiation. Check it, and there are RadCon level alerts going on in Missouri as we speak.
Wow. I'm looking at the map right now, Rick. Oh, wow. Let me just count.
Bringing your attention, a little sharper focus. Guess what's happening all over the world? And nobody, the news, is not talking about it. However, TEPCO, which is being run by some creepy woman out of England, is, and I talked about that 5 years ago when it first happened. And I'll tell you, we are in a state of DEFCON 4. Excuse me, DEFCON 2. Excuse me, DEFCON 2. We are at yellow alert. And that is literal. Now,
Rick, if
where's that in the media? Where is that? Well, the alternative media will have something like yesterday. What is it? The Wobble, the Great Wobble. Some of these other media places that are having pictures, and you can see it, the visual on exactly what's going on with the dead fish and the whales and the rest of it. Now, we have been essentially in a nuclear war and are now experiencing the aftermath.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Class, the reason that I mentioned this board of directors a number of times on the air and running for it, what I'm trying to say is you need to consider doing the same thing. The odds are almost impossible for me to win this position. Almost impossible. If I do get elected, it will be a miracle. Okay. However, what we do need to do is we need to start becoming involved, and we need to let people know that we're watching them. And that's what this is all about. So, yes, you can do it too. And what I'm trying to say is I'm doing it because I think it's necessary. I want to protect our power grid. I want to protect our way of life and our lives and our families. And I'd like you to consider doing that wherever you are in your neck of the woods. And as far as the radioactivity across the United States, there are 18 RADCON 4 level alerts or watch areas, concern areas. And I'm going to tell you where they are very quickly. Maine, Massachusetts. Well, Massachusetts, Connecticut, right on the border there. Maryland, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, South Dakota, Alabama, Idaho, Montana. Now, there are multiple areas within some of those states. So I just read the states. But where is it really concentrated? Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Maryland. Those are the areas where there's a significant concern. But rest assured that if you're not in one of those areas, there are plenty of other places that have RADCON 2 levels. Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, New Mexico, Nevada, Washington State, Oregon, South Carolina, North Carolina, Delaware, New Jersey, Wisconsin. And in our neck of the woods, we have RADCON 3. So all over the United States, with the exception of a small, with the exception of North Dakota. Yeah, looks like North Dakota is the only place in the United States that doesn't have an indicator for radiation that is of some level of concern. Can you imagine that?
How about we go to the next kind of maps with NETC? Now we go to the HISZ.RSOE.HU map. That one is on events like forest fires and why California and British Columbia are burning to the ground with more than 40,000 people being displaced because of forest fires, and those forest fires are a direct result of a coronal mass ejection that came off the sun a week ago and pressed our ionosphere down to such a level that there were lightning strikes on this very dry regions of British Columbia and California. It is really serious. And there's wildfires gone out of control. Now, they're starting to contain the one in California, but the one in Canada is still serious. I'm bringing up the map right now. It's on my Facebook page. I put a whole bunch of different kinds of maps like this for disasters. There's one going on right there, right now. What is that? That is North America near Newell, South Dakota. Extreme weather. Extreme weather. What's going on with the weather?
You know, Rick, I'm really glad you mentioned this. For the price of 1 year's worth of homeowners insurance, just 1 year's, I was able to buy a bulldozer. So I did. I bought a used bulldozer. And the reason I bought this bulldozer was actually multiple reasons. One is because the fire departments in our area are known as foundation savers. What that means is, by the time they're done getting to the fire, they're able to save the foundation. That means everything else is burned except for the foundation of the building. So, to protect us from fires, I bought a bulldozer. Yeah, so we're talking about these four teenage attackers that attacked this mentally handicapped white person and young man. And I'm just going to read this, but I have to change some of the words. And here are some of the quotes. The brutal attack took place in early January after 4 black Chicago teens kidnapped a mentally disabled white teen, held him captive for nearly 2 days, binding his hands and feet with duct tape, gagging him with a sock before using a knife to cut and stab the victim while laughing and shouting racial slurs and issuing death threats. In one segment of the live streamed attack, one of the females can be seen laughing as she punches the victim. At another point, one of the male attackers wraps a cord around the victim's neck while he groaned in pain. In another, a male approaches the victim with a knife and asks the other, should I shank his blank? Okay? And here's some of the other quotes. Blank Donald Trump. Blank white people. There's going to be a murder. Pop, pop, pop. We gonna put this blank in the trunk. Put a brick on the gas like, pistol whip his blank, fool. Those are the quotes. Then the video went viral, and immediately after the teens were arrested, the Chicago Police Department said initially it was not racially motivated. Really? It's not racially motivated. When you look at those quotes that I just read, this is not racially motivated. Blank Donald Trump. Blank white people. There's going to be a murder. Pop, pop, pop. We gonna put this blank in the trunk. Put a brick on the gas like, pistol whip his blank, fool. That's what it said. Okay. And by the way, whatever happened to English? We gonna put this blank in the trunk. Put a brick on the gas, like, pistol whip his blank. Fool. Whatever happened to English? This is outrageous. And the Chicago Police Department does not think this is racially motivated. The judge sentences this gal who streamed this with community service, 200 hours of community service, and 4 years of probation. What the heck is community service? What does that mean? Does that mean sweeping the sidewalk? What does it mean? Does it mean pruning the flower beds? Does it mean mopping the floors? What does it mean? And then you got to wonder this girl's in tears. This poor black girl, Brittany Herring Covington, who live streamed this, is in tears. She's actually crying. It was really funny while this handicapped white guy was being stabbed, poked, choked, gagged, duct taped. That's all fun and games. But now that she's facing 200 hours of community service, now that's really something worth crying about.
Vince, it's my turn to rant now.
Okay.
Yeah,
now
right.
hour and 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Civil rights policies, they were all designed to ensure that all Americans should be judged on a basis of individual merit. But the powers that be are doing everything to divide us by race and gender. When you look at race and gender measurements from any barometer, from when Barack Obama came into office and compared to when he left, we're as far as we've ever been. And too many people are falling for this divisive trick. Civil rights were inherently individual rights, defined as a right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And these rights are supposed to be equally held under law. The amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and by the way, when you listen to someone on the left we all know that the Democrats have been hijacked by the globalists, okay? They might mention the word Constitution, but just as a politically correct buzzword or wordsmithing, they'd hardly ever mention the Bill of Rights. Because the first 10 amendments, especially the first two, which is like freedom of speech and the ability to protect ourselves and be armed, they don't want to mention that. So that's just a little FYI there that I've noticed that people on the left hardly ever mention the Bill of Rights. They'll mention the Constitution just because it sounds good. But amendments to the Constitution and Bill of Rights guarantee that no state shall make or enforce any law that should abridge the privileges or immunities of any citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection under the laws. But when groups are given special privilege through corporate structure, government entitlement, life, liberty, property, and even due process is being erased for many of us. You know, we've talked about the kill the cop meme that came from the left. Certain so-called leaders who'd never practiced what they preach was on podiums talking about kill the cops. Well, the lawyers, the judges, bankers, and of course the politicians, but especially lawyers, judges, and bankers, are the mid-level management liaisons between the globalists and the people. They have let us down. They have basically said the little guy has no rights, unless it's the bottom 93% where they absolutely say we need to have a different set of rules, laws, and accountability, pardon me, based on everything that's different. Not for equality, fairness, tolerance, diversity, prosperity, inclusiveness, accountability, all these politically correct buzzwords, but to use as a tool, as a weapon to divide the American people by. And that's what's happening. Now, we got to look at a lot of these. I'm gonna dovetail so we don't beat a dead horse on this one article, but I want to dovetail what's happening in America today. The so-called media, the mainstream media, we can't have short memories here. Remember, there was a child porn scandal on Facebook. Remember, Facebook says that killing all whites that was posted is not hate speech. The Huffington Post was defending articles where authors don't exist. The word T-O-O, is sexist. CNN says if you use the term hard worker, it's racist. And how about just the mainstream media in general? Having thousands of hoax sites of fake news, misleading information, and 50 versions of the same story. So now people don't know what's credible anymore, and that's part of the plan. It's just like with what Roy Moore is going through. I have an article here. It says cop accuser interview unsupported claims by Moore. This one woman, basically, the media found out, the new media found out that Moore was involved in convicting her brother. I sent you a late article this morning, Vince, about how that the movie star, the actress of Wonder Woman, was seen in a porn video. Or what they have the technologies to do, and I've talked about this on the radio before, is with video, and they've had this technology for audio. They can take, because they've done this. If you go on my website, offgridmontana.com, you'll notice that I was putting a lot of my, about every 5 or 10 shows on my web page so people can hear them. And the powers that be were using my voice audibly and changing what I said. Basically changing words, and even deleting words and putting new words in. And they have the ability now, and this is on Drudge, where AI is so sophisticated, you can take someone's face or head, put it on a porn star, put it on a bank robber, put it on a child molester. You can basically, and if you get hold of someone's DNA because someone went to the hospital for a procedure, you can put them at a crime scene. The artificial intelligence sophistication in the wrong hands, which is in the hands of the globalists, can do so much damage. So things do not appear as they always are. Just like CNN last week, with the WikiLeaks documents and the date changes. It's gotten to the point where nothing is accurate and everything is surreal, and they're grooming you for a very gruesome life. Here's another article here. Former FBI official, halting immigration is not who we are, but Americans must adjust to terrorism. We've gotten to the point where political correctness, we're so drunk on the Kool-Aid of political correctness we can't even see straight. I swear to God, we ought to take the term litmus test, eliminate it from the dictionary, and basically add in the word sobriety test, because we're so drunk on it. Everything, whether it be CNN, ABC, MSNBC, it doesn't matter where in the mainstream media, they are just trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. And they have no credibility at all. And we have to call them on it, folks. We've gotten to the point where it's pretty obvious that the powers that be are trying to distract, dumb down, and divide us by groups. But the distractions, how often do people talk about our economy? The consumer debt is growing so much faster than GDP, and debt is climbing probably 8 times faster than wages. We're losing ground. We're losing freedoms and liberties. We are literally getting to the point where there's so many excuses used. We're upshifting in stupidity and incompetence as an alibi. And we have to call a spade and say it like it is, man.
So you leave me like 10 seconds to respond.
After the break.
Yeah, I've got some comments about that. First-hand comments about exactly what you were talking about. We'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us. Rich, okay, here we go. Here's my take on it. Back in 1993, I was notified that the NBC Today Show was interested in doing an interview about the technology that I built for a local school district in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And they were fascinated, and they had their advanced technology personality come down to Virginia with a camera crew and audio crew and so forth to video this technology and interview me and one other person. Actually, maybe 3 other people, but one of them was key, the superintendent of schools. And what they did was very interesting. They had one camera. They didn't have 2 cameras. They had one camera because they came from New York City to do this shoot. And they didn't want to pack lots and lots of equipment, so they brought one camera and one microphone and a recorder, video and audio recorder. And here's how they did it. They took, and this was technology that I built for a school system. And it was pretty neat. It really was advanced at the time. So what they did was they had they had 2 chairs where I was facing the superintendent. He was facing me. But they had one camera. So what they did was they placed the camera behind me. And you could see my back, my shoulder, my head from the back. But you could see him from the front because he was facing me and I was facing him. And they asked him all the questions. One question after the next, after the next, after the next. And then when he was done answering all of his questions, they switched the camera so that the camera was behind him, and then I was asked all the questions. One after the next, after the next, after the next. And what happened back in New York when they took all this video back with them, they cut, pasted, edited, stitched the video all together and made a video that they showed on the NBC Today show. Now, let me give you an example. This is not what happened, but let me give you an example of what could have happened. Not by NBC, but in this kind of a scenario where people can be made to say things that they didn't actually say. Because now the interviewer was not on camera at this time. The question is asked, and you just see the response from the person being interviewed. And in my case, the response would be, so Vinny, how do you feel about such and such? And I respond with my response, my face, my words, my voice being shown on the screen that the viewers would see. So let me make something up. This is all made up. So, Mr. Finelli, how long do you keep that server, that file server running in the back room to support all of these computers, these hundreds of computers? How long is that running? And I say, all the time. It's running all the time. It's all the time. My response is all the time. Then later on, what could be stitched in is the interviewer could say, well, how often do you feel like killing Mr. So-and-so? Mm-hmm. All the time. And then could that be brought in front of a court? Could it be shown to the jury? We have the video. He says all the time. And he did say all the time.
Yeah.
And that was in 1993.
Yeah.
Now,
Katie Couric did the same thing in that gun control documentary a few years ago. Mm-hmm. They can switch anything around. And remind me after the break, I'm going to go out and feed some animals. Remind me after the break about this sexual harassment video someone sent me from Canada with Tom Brady starring in it. Just go ahead and ask me, remind me when we get back, and I want to address what they can do today.
Okay. We'll be right back after top of the hour news and commercial announcements. Rich Sheaben's going to feed the animals. I'm going to check on how much power we have being generated by our solar system to see if we can finish the rest of the broadcast. I think we can. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich Sheaben's with us. I'm Vin Finelli. And I just checked on the solar array. It's working just great, generating over 4,000 watts. It's enough to run the dishwasher, the refrigeration equipment, the heating systems, the lights, do the broadcast. It's working just great. That's because it's a sunny day. Now, if it was a cloudy day, I don't think I'd be saying the same thing. Rich Sheben, were you able to feed the animals?
Got it. I did a little running,
Yeah.
but I just got here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Vince, can I do part
take
two of my
advantage of
rant?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. And the reason why I'm dovetailing all this stuff with Roy Moore is to show how easy it is to point the finger. And I want to remind all of us that, and I'm not just speaking for myself because I've never known anybody that isn't an imperfect sinner. No one is an angel. But Roy Moore does talk about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And that's what we need at this particular point. We need to decentralize. We need to give the people a voice again, because the little person, when I say the little person, you know I'm talking about the bottom 93% of America. And I'm going to give you another example here on how the powers that be want to distract, dumb down, and divide us by groups, lowering the bars of standards and expectations, especially for getting and keeping a job. So things get so bad that the people come to the government or the powers that be and say, help me fix this. Here's an article, Madness, British Girl Scouts to allow adult transgenders to share toilets and beds with girls. I'm not making this up, okay? And this was on investmentwatchblog.com. And it basically says how it's a boon for pedophiles and that girl guides, apparently what they call it in the UK, are aged from 15 to 25. And this means that adult biological men will share toilets, changing rooms, and beds with little girls. I am not paraphrasing what I'm saying here because I'm going through the article. And they're saying that it could cause anxiety. You think? Members are allowed to use facilities of the gender they self-identify as. So we're in an era that's beyond 1984 Orwellian. We truly are in a politically correct Twilight Zone episode, really made with virtual reality. And this is why AI is going to take over reality and make everything look different. Up, down, winter, summer, everything is going to be made to fool our minds. And if we don't raise the bars of standards and expectations, especially for getting and keeping a job, things are going to continue to get worse. So we are all imperfect sinners, and people have to remember that. But when people talk specifically, not just about the Constitution, but the Bill of Rights, which you very rarely hear anybody on the left saying because they want to get rid of free speech. They want to get rid of our guns. Now, keep in mind, every time, when you look at a lot of history, when we lose our guns and the right to protect ourselves, that's when genocide occurs. That's when governments go wild, and they've killed hundreds of millions of people over just the last 100 years. So we need to start speaking up. We need to stop blaming everybody under the sun and start reading, researching, and sharing information with other people, because silence equals consent. And that just makes us more and more of the incorporated or divided states of America or divided groups of America. So, Vince, I didn't give you much time to respond because of the break last time, so I'll let you have some time. I appreciate you letting me rant. Thank you.
Well, let me respond with this. This is from BBC News, BBC.com. Okay? It's the BBC news site. And what they're saying is that wolf whistling in London is now a police matter. Now, I got to tell you that sometimes I have a really pretty wife. I really do. And I met my wife in 4th grade. And she's just a wonderful lady. And every once in a while, I'll be at the farm here, and I'll whistle at her, kind of like, like a guy might whistle at a pretty girl. Well, I didn't think anything of it. Heck, I didn't realize it was a hate crime. I'm just whistling at my beautiful wife, Mrs. Finelli. And I don't do it all the time. But, I might be leaving the farm, or she might be in the garden or something, and I might be pulling in the truck. Look out the window, there she is, with her back toward me, and I might whistle. Like, I really appreciate this lady, and whistle. Well, heck, in London, it is becoming a hate crime to do that. Wow. Now, maybe I'm confused. But I think that if I were walking down the street and a girl whistled at me, and it would never happen, but because I have a radio face, but if a girl whistled at me and like, wow, there's a handsome guy, I wouldn't say, I'm going to call the police. I'm going to call 911. That was a hate crime. I would say, wow, I'd be kind of flattered. Am I confused, Rich Scheben, about this? Do you think that whistling at a girl is a hate crime?
Pardon me. This is why we need to have a situation where we have to increase our memories a little bit, write things down. And I'm going to answer it this way. Let's remember a lot of the things that's happened with men and women over the years. A Democrat congressman saying Kellyanne Conway looks familiar on her knees when she was in the Oval Office on the sofa. Joy Behar from The View calling Bill Clinton rape victims tramps. Normalizing pedophilia, New York Times on record saying it's not a crime and defending NAMBLA. I think that's an acronym for the North American Man-Boy Love Association or something like that. Look at the definition of marriage. We have the divorce rate almost 75% now. It's not just same-sex, but now in America they're marrying children, pets, farm animals, trees, computers, inanimate objects. Now, for all this male privilege that you see out there, combat deaths, 99.9% male. Work mortality, 94% male. Homicides, 76% male. Suicides, 75% male. Isn't it wonderful to have all this male privilege? Folks, again, this is a tool to divide the American people by groups. It's a divide and conquer strategy which has the consequences of lowering the bars of standards and expectations, and not just for getting and keeping a job, but for everything. And this is why the powers that be use the term identity politics. This is their home run pitch. And this is why when I say we stand for principle, we should have the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody based on truth. And if someone else gets away with it because they're from a certain group or has lower consequences for it, we should all do it. And that's what standing for principle is. You have to be willing to be hated for saying things and doing things that somebody else gets away with. And that's why they have so much race baiting, gender baiting, sex baiting, religion baiting, ideology and generation baiting as their MO on the mainstream media. We have to call it for what it is, because when you lower the bars of standards and expectations, and I'm blue in the face saying this, I've been saying this for years, you're insulting the work ethic, the ability, and the intelligence of all these people shoved into these groups. What does this do? It degrades and disrespects every, especially minority, stuck in these groups. It eliminates synergy. It's a divide and conquer strategy. You never empower a nation, a group, or an individual by lowering the bars of standards and expectations. All this does is protect the elites. It's meant to make us submissive. It's meant to break your will. It's meant to call you an extremist, controversial, racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, intolerant, violent, hater, conspiracy theory, et cetera, et cetera. And then what they do is they run everything, protect everything by groups. That's their MO. But for anybody who brings this to light, even if you're a conservative female, they demonize, discredit, and delegitimize you through all mediums. And that's why the fake news, that term doesn't even do it justice. It's way worse than fake news. The people are bought and paid for. And this is why the mainstream media, especially in late-night talk shows, likes to use satire and banter. Because they want to destroy America by rewarding mediocrity. And if you don't laugh at the jokes that they do, you're, again, a racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when America is destroyed from within because we've rewarded mediocrity for decade after decade after generation, ingenuity, productivity, innovation, knowledge, it doesn't mean anything anymore. When you can't use hard work, effort, proven results, qualifications, and criteria of that like to make yourself more successful, to give yourself a shot, a chance at survival, then America's gone. And this is why the left-right paradigm, you need to get it out of your heads. It is irrelevant. It's only 5%. Ideology is a small part of it. It's the aristocracy versus the serfs, and they can do everything possible to make sure we're divided. All right, Vince, I'm going to give you the opportunity to comment on that after the break, buddy.
Yeah. All right, we'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us. OffGridMontana.com. For those who would like the definition of misogynist, it's a person who dislikes, despises, or is strongly prejudiced against women. Okay? So it's a person who dislikes, despises, or is strongly prejudiced against women. That's the definition, according to the Internet, of misogynist. MISOGYNIST. I thought we'd get that definition out of the way before I continue with something that is also in the news that I think dovetails with what you're saying. Now, in France, dairy farmers are killing themselves, suicide. It's all part of the big problem, where we are surrounded by 360 degrees of attacks, assaults. And here is a story, New York Times. NewYorkTimes.com. I don't very often go to New York Times. But here's a story about a dairy farmer. He kept 66 cows, small farm, at a thriving estate in southern Brittany. But falling milk prices, let me say it a different way, falling milk prices, accumulating debts, depression, and worries about his health in middle age became too much to bear. Now, middle age. He's 46. That doesn't seem very old to me. I'm 65. So at just 46 years old, Mr. Gavolt shot himself in the heart in a grove behind his house on a cold December day last year. It was a place that he loved, near the fields that he loved, explained his sister Marie, who said she was very close to him, but did not see his suicide coming. The death of this man was part of an epidemic of suicides among French farmers and rural families. And public health officials and researchers are trying to grapple with this and figure out what's going on. Farmers are particularly at risk because, by the nature of their work, which can be isolating, financially precarious, and physically demanding. For farmers who do not have children to help with the work and eventually take over, the burden is that much greater. Falling milk prices and meat have also added to the debts and stress in recent years. So that's, okay. The most recent statistics made public in 2016 by France's Public Health Institute show that 985 farmers killed themselves from the years 2007 to 2011, at a suicide rate 22% higher than that of the general population. It's a big problem. It is really a big problem. Now, that's France. Here's an article from Iowa. Iowa Now, the University of Iowa. uiowa.edu. Long after the 80s farm crisis, farm workers still take their own lives at a high rate. Goes on to say, the number of suicides among farmers and farm workers in the United States has remained stubbornly high since the end of the 1980s farm crisis, much higher than workers in many other industries, according to a new study from the University of Iowa. Farmers are killing themselves. And the reason is poor access to quality health care, isolation, financial stress, and farmers have a disproportionately high risk of suicide. Okay? I can understand that. As a farmer, I can't understand killing oneself. However, I can understand the stresses. I can understand the demands. I can understand the non-stop, endless problems that we have. There's not one day that someone in our family doesn't say, here's something that failed and we have to fix it like right now. As a matter of fact, it's almost like when I come and check on the farm during the broadcast, during the commercial breaks like we're having right now, I hear, here's the latest crisis. It's nonstop. We'll be right back. George will be with you in just a minute. We've got George in New Hampshire, USA Preparedness Instructor. Welcome, George.
Hi, Vincent. And hello,
Hey.
Rich. Rich, just tell me one thing. Let me know when it's my time to rant, okay?
Right now.
I love it. Thanks, George. Time is so short, buddy. You got to say it like it is.
Oh, no. Hey, there's got to be somebody to still believe sanity is actually normal, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you, whether you like Winston Churchill or you didn't, one thing you had to say, he was a very good orator. And he said something one time that I think is apropos to the times we live in. Do you mind if I just say it? It's only a paragraph. It's not very long.
He was quite the statesman, quite unlike everyone we have today in Congress and the Senate, right? Do we have anyone who compares to a Winston Churchill in the use of the English language? I don't think so.
Well, he said this, though. He said, if you will not fight for right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory is sure and not too costly, you may come to a moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. There may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than to live as slaves.
Well said.
Yeah, it's very apropos, and I can understand. I will say this, that I've discovered one thing. Now, all of us are pretty much sons of immigrants in terms of somewhere in our family tree. People had to walk away from lives they had, established ways, family and community connections, and basically risk everything on a fairly perilous travel course across an ocean, you know, to an uncertain destiny. And the reason we're here today is because they didn't give up. Now, they had it very hard when they got here. There wasn't much of anything waiting for them except whatever their two hands and their minds and their strengths could basically carve out for themselves. Now I've seen it where we don't give up. Now, I'm not saying we don't get discouraged. I'm not saying we don't get downtrodden or we don't get whatnot. But you know and I know we're going against the trends. I think you gentlemen more than I, in the sense that you're rejecting the easy government remuneration, basically just go along, get along attitude, and you'll get your little stipend. And what you're doing is you're basically continuing that frontier mentality where, you know, you're struggling against the elements, you're struggling against adversities to basically make a living for your families and put a roof over your head, right?
Well, sure. And I'll tell you, George, I want to make it very clear that whether it be Vince or myself and everybody I know in the Liberty Movement or however you want to label us, I don't know one person who's anti-government, because you mentioned the word government in that. And I think a lot of us are about logical, common sense government, not too overspending government, too big government, too corrupt, manipulative government, foreign-owned, foreign-run government. We're anti that type of stuff. But the little people have been forgotten, and this is one of the reasons why I do a lot of this stuff. You know, like Vince was talking about farmers and deaths and suicide. I read an article, I remember a few days ago, saying that Monsanto is strong-arming farmers to use controversial chemicals. And the number one cause of deaths in America, which I've said many times over the air, for people 50 and under, is drug overdose. This is a nation in despair. So what if we got together and really saw what the so-called left or the globalists are doing to Americans, spending billions of dollars to distract them down and divide the people? They're not coming up with solutions. They're trying to basically delegitimize and discredit and demonize every individual who's for the Bill of Rights and Constitution. What if the bottom 93 got together and said no more GMOs, no more hormones, steroids, antibiotics, no more vaccines, no more wars, no more de-engineering, no more pedophilia? The same rules, laws, accountability for everybody, including hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications to get a job. No more fluoride, chlorine, and 200 other chemicals in our water. What if we said yes to adult mutual consensual sex instead of the pedophilia running rampant? What if we got together and actually spoke up using common sense and logic that benefits the masses? See, it's just the aristocracy versus the serfs, and the serfs are growing because the middle class is being deleted.
Well, I've got to agree with you. And as you were saying this, I was leaning back in the studio chair, and I was thinking, if those things could be accomplished that you mentioned, Rich Scheben, we could all go on vacation. USA Prepares could take a couple years off. Because we wouldn't have the strife. We wouldn't have the endless... let me share this with you guys, George and Rich. So Coinbase, and this actually ties to what you're saying. Coinbase, during not this last break, but the one before, I thought, let me just see if I've got my account set up. I've only been doing this for a couple days, trying to get this account working. I've been unsuccessful because they keep asking me for more and more information. Well, they're trying to verify who I am, and I can't get that done. However, every time I go to log in to Coinbase, which is a cryptocurrency exchange, I haven't done anything. Okay, I've not sold or had a transaction in a year, over a year. So all I want to do is get this account, so that if I decide to do something, I can. Well, it ties to a cell phone. Every time I log in, it sends a message to a cell phone. I don't have a cell phone, so I have to use someone else's. Actually, I have to have them tell me I got a message. They keep telling me that they get these messages every time I try to log in to see if my account is working. Not to use my account, just to see if it's working. What I'm saying is you absolutely, positively, to join the current crypto marketplace, you have to have a cell phone, which means that you are then being tracked. Why? Because of the extreme volatility of the cryptocurrencies. If you want to play this game, if you want to get in this marketplace, if you want to know what's happening to your wherewithal, meaning whatever you've saved, earned, generated, and if it's in cryptocurrencies, if you want to keep track of it, you have to respond with your cell phone saying, yeah, I got the message on the cell phone. Here I am. Yeah, I'm using my computer. The cell phone's right next to me. I'm good to go. I can verify who I am because my cell phone is next to me. I click on the cell phone. I can now use my computer right next to the cell phone. What I'm saying is this system is now going to track your every step. If you think that you can be involved in cryptocurrencies and not have those who want to know where you are at every moment, you're mistaken. This is unbelievable. Well, and they've created this enormous bubble. Rich, even in the last 4 days, you and I talked off the air about Litecoin, Litecoin. It was at $98. Today, it's just under $400 in 4 days. You can probably earn the same return in less than 1 minute that you would receive in a whole year from your bank account interest if you had Litecoin. I haven't done the actual math, but it's pretty darn close.
That's if you bought it low, you sold it high and not held on to it. And I still believe that if you have a password or a username, hacking, phishing, it's all possible. And it's an infancy industry. It's in speculation.
Yeah.
I don't think the anonymity is there like people think. And we're going to find out when the IRS sends.
Rich,
the IRS,
they, in order for me to have an account, I had to have one of two things. This is an account for an exchange called Coinbase. I either had to have a camera on my computer, which I do not have, or a cell phone with a camera, which I do not have. So I had to borrow a cell phone to make this happen. Now, that's kind of unusual for someone to have to borrow a cell phone to make this happen. But they wanted a picture of me, a picture, so that it could be verified that I'm me. Now, maybe the problem is, and I sent him a picture of my license, my Missouri license. Well, maybe the problem is my eyes were closed on the picture of my license. I don't know, but I can't seem to get this account activated with their criteria. Now, it's one of a couple things. Either their system's flawed or the demand for activation of accounts is so high they can't cope with it. That could be because in 4 days, Litecoin has gone up from less than $100 to $400, just under $400. This thing is taken off, and I don't think there's any stopping it. I think Miles was absolutely, positively correct. Now, Miles was wrong in one area. He said that Litecoin would double. This was, a couple weeks ago. It would double by Christmas. It doubled in a couple days. So he was absolutely right that it would take off. But by how much it took off, I mean, to say it would double in less than a month was unbelievable. How could that be? It went up by 4 times as much in 4 days.
Vince, I'll tell you something. One thing about anything that's speculative or hedging, it's all a guess. I'm reading articles where it could be a government operation to try to get more people in, get people out. We talked about margin, that people are literally selling their houses, their silver, their gold to buy cryptocurrencies right now. And I don't see this ending positively for most Americans.
George, I'd love to hear your comments when we come back. George in New Hampshire's with us. Rich Sheben's with us. I'm Ben Finelli. This is USA Prepares. I was ranting about how we are going to be tied to smartphones and how the spying will escalate because of our need to be tied to our electronic cryptocurrencies, and how the government will be able to track where we are every moment of the day because we'll be tied to our finances, which will be tied to our cell phones. George, did you have a comment or thoughts on that? I believe that's accurate, what I just said.
Well, yes. I've noticed now, it kind of is like a circle I've noticed, is that, as American citizens, we can't have a Swiss bank account, correct?
Okay.
You know how the Swiss very jealously guarded their privacy. They would hold anyone's money, and they wouldn't release it or give any information. Well, something strange happened where they did. They finally made it so that they gave the names over of Americans who were holding accounts, which was unknown in Swiss banking history that they'd ever do it. But they only did it for the Americans. And you know how and you'll say, what do the Swiss have to do with what we're talking about? Well, I noticed something else, too. Roman Polanski, he raped a young 13-year-old girl. He fled to France. French wouldn't extradite him. Now, this is all going to come around in a circle. But he went to receive an award or give a speech in Switzerland, and he was detained on the warrant outstanding from the United States. Now, again, Switzerland being neutral, jealously guarding their neutrality and basically keeping to themselves. Now they're bending rules that are long-standing traditions, and what it tells me is the Swiss must have been, The Swiss must have been aware or made aware of what currency trends were going and how all the gold they were holding and monies and all that, if they wanted to be part of this greater system where it was going to go to like in the ether, like an electronic currency where there won't be any more cash being traded amongst us, which is a totalitarian regime's a dream, to be able to know every single transaction. And then we go biblical. It says, no man, he forces men, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to all have to take the mark, or they would not be allowed to buy and sell. It's all coming together where, in other words, it's like a circle that's just forming up around us, and you're realizing that they're chastising you because you don't have a cell phone, you don't have a camera on your computer, and you're dealing in something, a cryptocurrency, that they want to get their claws into because they don't want anyone to escape this financial system they're setting up where they're going to regulate you to death, basically. That's what I see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't disagree, George.
I totally agree.
Now we're in a situation when you're hedging and speculating. There's two words that especially is appropriate for the bottom 93%. When you chase all these different new innovations, new ideas, new basically economic situations where you can try to hit a home run and put more money in your bank account, there's two words that come into mind: solvency and liquidity. Because, you can chase silver, you can chase gold, you can chase land, you can chase cryptocurrencies, you can chase all this different stuff. And there's many different ways to try to keep your net worth up and to invest in the future. But for the people that don't have a lot, solvency runs thin after a while when they keep chasing. And liquidity turns into a big issue. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not saying that cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin is absolutely a tulip bulb situation. I'm saying it could be. And it's going to be very interesting to see because the IRS has claimed that a very small percentage of profits were reported compared to the profit taking on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Well, it's going to be very interesting to see if the IRS actually catches these people. And that's going to tell us if anonymity is valid. Because if anonymity is not valid, I think that's going to really turn off a lot of people and go in this direction.
Very, very well put, Rich Scheben. George, thanks so much. But I believe Miles is right. Either you can get on board with cryptocurrencies or you'll be run over. I really believe it. By them. You can either join it, embrace it, and use it, because what's left? The fraud, the Federal Reserve accounting unit dollar? Rich Scheben, George, thank you so much for being with us.